So for me, I have it very clear, but I have been in this business many years. But anybody that comes new to the cloud is like, okay, this is crazy. Is this my responsibility or is their responsibility? So the key here is, if you can configure it, it's your responsibility. That's all. And that is something that we try to do with Prowler or any CSPM tool tries to do, right? So if you can configure it, I'm going to tell you how to configure it and if it's properly set up or not. That is the key part of building a CSPM, let's say.
Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time you're watching or listening to this episode. So, welcome to CloudTalks BR. Okay, so this is a podcast where we explore the fascinating world of the cloud together. So, here, this is our first English episode. So, I have here Toni. But in general, here in the podcast, we talk about careers, we get tips from established experts of people in the cloud market. And of course, we have to talk a little bit of what I love, which is cloud security. So here I'm Fernando, okay, I'm the host of this podcast. And here we're on season 1, episode 3 of Cloud Talks BR on SOC Brazil TV. So here in this episode, we have a very special guest. So I have here Toni. So he has over 20 years of experience of the IT world. He's the creator of Prowler open source and also works at Prowler as the founder and CTO of this company. Okay, so Prowler is the most popular open source cloud security posture management solution in the market. So thanks, Toni. Thanks for participating in this episode, and welcome to Cloud Talks BR.
Hi, Fernando. Thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk to the Brazilian community about cloud security.
Exactly. So here we're trying to help the Brazilian community. So I really appreciate your time. We have a little bit of a different time zone, but we got it to work. So maybe I will stumble upon some words here. First time recording in English. Maybe I'm a little anxious or something. I don't know what's going on. I can't speak. I can't speak right now. I don't know what's going on. But
Remember we met uh, when the time we met, it was like 2 a.m. in the morning for me, right?
yeah, it was 2 or 3 a.m.
So
for you,
I'm
man.
I'm used to talk any time of the day.
Yeah, man, that was 2, 3 o'clock, and you're like, hey, we have here Toni. He's it's 3 o'clock. He wants to introduce his product, and I was like, oh my god, this guy is crazy. And overall, it was a great class. So I met you, through that course. So it was a pretty eye opening situation, But formally here, Toni. So here to our Brazilian people community here. So I'd like to formally introduce yourself. So, what's your experience? What have you been doing? What's your plans? What are your goals? And
Mhm.
we'll get on with the show.
Nice. Okay. Yes. Thank you again. Well, I've been working on cybersecurity most of my professional career. I started when I was like 19, doing very basics computer stuff, very foundational computers stuff. When by the times of Windows NT, remember Windows
Oh,
NT? Or I'm too old.
that was before my time, man.
Yeah, I'm very old. I think I look younger than what I am.
I
Anyway,
think we're gonna discover why. There's a secret behind to all of this success.
yeah, exactly. The secret. We will tell the secret later. This is just a cliffhanger. So I started with the very foundations of computers, and then I moved. I'm from Granada, from a town of Granada, south of Spain. I live in the mountains now, but I moved to Madrid back in the 2000, and then working for when I was there, I was working for consultancy companies doing pen testing, security assessments, and all that stuff. I learned a ton of things. I joined hacking groups, not legal or illegal, but just hack meetings, hacking groups, and all that stuff. nothing, nothing beyond learning. Okay, let's leave it that way.
Educational content or educational
Exactly,
purpose.
educational things only. And I worked for telco companies, banks, many different companies, all sizes, until I joined Alfresco, like in 2010. I think Alfresco is an open source enterprise application for enterprise content management, and I moved to the US when I worked for them, and I lived in the US like 7 years, and then after that I moved back to Europe to work for AWS, and after 2 years I started my own career, let's say my own company, and now I have Prowler, like, which is, as you mentioned, is a open source tool, and also is a company where we develop Prowler open source and our SaaS. That is more or less everything that I've done in the last 20 years.
So you see, how do you resume a 20-year history? Yeah, 1 minute, 1 minute and a half. You resume 20 years of experience of headaches and a lot of
Yeah.
learning experiences.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. So here you mentioned that you lived in the USA. So I just want to do a quick follow up. Like, what did you feel was difficult for you? Did you have a difficult time adapting to the culture, or was it somewhat easy because it's kind of completely different than Europe?
Yeah, it's a very different country from Spain, anywhere in Spain. But at the same time, it was very rewarding because for me it was like a dream come true to work and live in the US. I didn't live in Silicon Valley or the Bay Area where all the IT startups movement was happening, but in Atlanta, Georgia, which was kind of different, but also is a huge city with a very important cybersecurity network and companies. So I learned a lot of things there, in addition to the language, more or less, as you can notice. Um, but also, I had time to meet a lot of people once I was there in the US, to go to important conferences like Black Hat, like DEF CON, um, Rainforce, Reinvent, AWS Reinvent, all those important conferences. I met important people as well, which was very important for me when I started with Prowler and doing talking about many different topics, always related to cloud security. But before cloud security, I did other things for open source, like network security and Wi-Fi network security and things like that. So meeting people and doing networking with the community has been a key part of my career, because once you have something to show and you share something, in most cases, at least in my case, the community give you back what you give to the community.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So that's so you can say that participating in these events in general really helps anyone's career. Is that kind of what you're saying? Especially if the
Yeah.
people are from cyber or not from cyber, from the cloud world. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, the cloud world is particular. We can talk about that later, but it's more about the open source. The open source since I started in computers, I knew more or less about BSD. The free BSD was my first operating system. Then I switched to Solaris, Sun OS, also Linux. And for me, open source, I mean, Solaris is not open source, but it was Unix. But Linux, Red Hat, by that time Debian, Slackware, all those distributions were for me like a big boom in my head, because it was like, okay, all this stuff is free. I can build my own servers. I remember when I was 21, I had my own servers running 24/7 in my bedroom, running my website, blix.com, blyx.com, which is my blog as well. And that I had that in a very little computer inside my bedroom with the fan running 24/7. The fan, and I was listening like zzz all the time. But wait, what it was for the sake of being a hacker,
Yeah, it was the hacker mindset.
Yeah, exactly. and not sleeping at all because I spend a lot of time coding and doing stuff during the nights. Actually, by that time, I also developed a tool in PHP. I'm sorry about that. Called PHP PHP Radmin for radios. Like it was like a front end interface for free radios, which was very helpful to build more secure Wi-Fi networks, including release certificates and all that stuff. So by that time, the Wi-Fi networks weren't as secure, if we can say that, as now. So we needed some open source tools to do that, and I started my journey on that as well. That was in 2006. Yeah, so for
Awesome.
me, giving to the community, building open source tools and security tools was a big part of my whole professional experience, but doing that also as a side projects. To have an interesting side projects, to go to conferences, to talk and to explain your open source project is, I think it's key if you want to do something I won't say important, but at least to feel yourself like you are giving something to the community in general, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. So obviously you have a lot of experience with the open source world. It's obvious. I feel that you have, you've been with the open source community. Now you have Prowler, which is open source. So I think it really has changed your life. So just a quick, why should people contribute to open source projects? Of course, there's the learning aspects, but what else can people get out of this experience, contributing to an open source project?
Well, so if you want to do something for the community in general, like some people that goes to a shelter and gets a dog or a cat or helps the elders, whatever, it's fine. So in my case, I do that through open source. I like to do that. I like the idea of learning from the community and teaching the community. So like this type of one to n type of um, contributions. So I started also back in 2000 with my blog, blix.com, as I said before, writing just articles because I wanted to not only to tell everybody that I knew that, but also to remember what I did at some point. Like, okay, how to set up Apache with SSL back in the days, or how to hack the 3COM router that I had at home, or how to um, figure out what was the password, things like that. Um, Also, I remember I wrote articles about how to do stuff with OpenSSL, how to do stuff with PGP, things like that I was interested, and I wanted to write my own how-tos and give them to the community. So that has been with me, with my personality most of my career, and I think that is good because you learn. Of course, you are making your own brand, and also you are giving something to others.
All right, that's awesome. So if the guy that has a lot of open source doesn't say that, that's a great experience for everyone to at least try it out. In case they don't contribute to the open source world. Especially me, I love this the sense of community. So it's kind of like in this sense, like how you said, oh, you contribute to open source projects. This podcast in general, it's a way of giving back to the community. So it's I really love the sense of like sharing information as well. I would love to participate more in GitHub projects and things like that, but you know,
Yeah, but there's
everybody
something
has their
important.
own kind of way of contributing. But I always had this mindset as well because when I was in the beginning of my career, man, I have received so much support, and I was like, I felt like the gratitude of like. I look back in some conversation. I was like, "Oh my god, I was a pure idiot. Look at the way I talked. Look at I reflect on like, my goodness. Nowadays, it's like, but a lot of people help me with those, stupid questions. With some like, oh my god, this question is so newbie. So I
Yeah,
really
but
got that inside of me as well.
there are many ways to contribute with community, with an open source community. Not only being a developer. I'm not a developer. I never consider myself a good programmer, but I enjoy doing things. I enjoy writing blog posts. I enjoy helping others. responding questions about, hey, how to compile back in the days the Linux kernel to support this Bluetooth card or whatever, Um, and in Spain, there was a very large community, open source community around Linux and open source in general. So I enjoyed that a lot. I met a lot of people in those conferences, like the Linux conference or open source conference and all that stuff. So it's not that for those that are listening to us thinking, hey, I'm not a developer. How can I contribute? So you can contribute translating software, writing blog posts, teaching people how to use a software to use something like, let's say, Prowler or whatever, or Apache, so Apache server. So you don't need to be the Apache developer. You have to be Apache user, like deploying Apache server, how to add PHP support to Apache, or how to harden Apache, things like that, or Nginx or whatever. So there are many different ways to contribute, not
Or
necessarily
even
writing code.
yeah, no, that's true. That's the kind of like the open source traditional is like the writing code, but there's obviously, if you think about it, there's different ways that you can contribute. For example, opening a YouTube channel, man, that's great sense
Yeah,
of technology there. So kind
exactly.
of like what I felt as well, and that's awesome.
Or a
So
podcast. Now that nobody has a podcast.
yeah, yeah. So here we go. We have here a podcast idea. Why not? Why not? Something that I always wanted to do, and I was like, hey, I found a crazy guy who kind of like supports the idea, and well, let's go.
Yeah, there we go.
So it's a way of contributing, because man, I never thought I'd have contact with some experts like the way like how we're talking here. I have some other great people here in Brazil, reference people. I was like, man, the power of like just talking. I don't
Exactly.
consider myself a super technical. My God, I'm a professional, cloud guy. But I'm like, hey, want to talk? Sure, okay, let's go. I'm learning, the people are learning, so it's going to be public on the podcast, the YouTube, and so
Hmm.
it's everybody kind of wins in its situation.
Anybody has something to give, even if. So, for example, now we have hired at the company some interns. It's amazing to be with them. I love spending time with them because they have a very, very fresh mind. They don't even know many things about cloud, but to see them how they assume things and how to start working with things like Terraform or CloudFormation without having idea of, hey, you are building a network with services, with code. And for them, like they are just coming out of the university, it's like, boom, it's amazing. I enjoy that a lot. So we are learning. So everybody, even a newbie or a first year student, has something to teach. So it's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think that like when you have the juniors, they're obviously like, hey, they have like the fire in the eyes, like they want to study 25 hours per day. They loved everything, and then like as soon as you get kind of more like the next level, you're like, oh man, this problem again. So you kind of lose the charm of the technologies in general. So I think you kind of like it because you get the new mindset. You're like, wow, look at what they're thinking, and then you get inspired by what they say. So that's pretty cool. Kind
Yeah,
of a
but
cool way to
we are
learn.
very lucky to work in technology because we always have something new to get excited about, right? So now the artificial intelligence, yesterday was other thing, tomorrow is going to be other thing. So we always have something cool to read about, to study, to hack around. It's amazing. So I try to, I mean, in the last 20 years I have had up and downs about my excitement with the technology in general, but I have had many more ups than downs. So like to be doing um, so for example, thinking about, okay, I'm going to write this article because I haven't seen an article like this talking about forensics in the cloud. For example, I wrote about that in 2016 when nobody was writing about cloud forensics or digital forensics in the cloud and how to collect artifacts in the cloud and all that stuff, which was something that I enjoy a lot because nobody was writing about that, and I had to create the content, proof of concepts, all of that stuff. So that thinking about reading a lot. and thinking about new things is what makes me get excited and motivated every day.
Oh man, that's incredible. That's incredible. So that's there's a lot of things that we can get there. So here I just want to kind of kick off to another question here. So we kind of played around that you're, hey, 20 years in technology doesn't look like it. So there's a secret. There's a secret to this. I kind of want to discover. So in this case, what's the importance or the benefits of maintaining a healthy mental state while working in tech? So it's kind of like what we're talking about now. And I know that you did Ironman training. So how did that prepare you, and how do you prepare nowadays? Like, what's different?
Yeah. Well, for those, the people that is listening to us, they don't see me. I don't look as younger as Fernando is saying, but thanks Fernando for the compliment. But yeah, so when you are in technology and you love what you do in technology, it's very easy to get into technology too much, to work a lot of hours, to get overweight, and to do nothing other than reading, writing code, and hacking stuff. That's all. And I realized like 15 years ago about that, and I started running. I had a surgery on my knees, and I started doing bicycle and swimming to recover from my surgery. And I realized, hey, I'm doing triathlon. So I joined a triathlon club, and I started training for small triathlons. For those that they are not familiar with triathlon is a sport that covers swimming, biking, and running by that order. And there are many different distances. So of course, I wanted to go all out with an epic, race. And there is nothing more epic than an Ironman. An Ironman, which is like almost 4 kilometers swimming, 180K on the bike, and 42 a marathon kilometers running. So I started training for that. I did many other races, marathons, and just other races. And I've been doing triathlon, focus on Ironman, around 6 years. I did my last one in Brazil, actually, in Floripa.
Oh, you see, here we
I
have
enjoy
the
a
Iron
lot.
Man in Brazil.
Yeah, that was my third Ironman. But also, I've been doing half Ironmans, which is, as the name says, half distance. Um, and that made me, so that is very intense to train for an Ironman. That is very intense. So that made me not to think about cybersecurity or computers, at least while I was riding the bike, running, or swimming. Not all the time, at least, and that was very good for everything, for your health. I have to say that Ironman itself is not very healthy because it's too much, but
It's an excess.
but at least for me, I took it easy. As well, I mean, as easy as you can take an Ironman. But because I have a good timing on my 3 Ironmans. But well, basically, to have very clear path and living style, that helps a lot. So I of course I screwed with that many times, because sometimes you don't have the motivation, or sometimes you don't even know what to do with your life. In that case, go out, do a long run, and this is going to help you to at least fresh your mind, at least deserve a good beer, and then make a decision. So I had to do that many times, and now what I do is CrossFit and running only. So I have my bicycle parked for some time, and I don't swim. Well, I swim in summer, but not much.
It's not the training for the triathlon swimming. It's kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go to the beach and let's swim. Kind of
Yeah, and
natural, easy going.
so I've been swimming around 10 years, so I can be not swimming. Actually, last summer I did a triathlon, a very short one with no training, with my brother, with my younger brother, and it was very good. So we had a lot of fun, and I didn't sink, so it was good.
I didn't die, so I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. So how long is the Ironman uh time to do the
To
course.
finish.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
finish.
the one I did in Floripa took me a little bit less than 12 hours. And my best one was in Barcelona, and it took me 10 hours 45 minutes or something like that. So below 11, which is not bad for like regular athlete. I never won
regular
anything.
regular people.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to win anything in my life in terms of sports, at least. But it's
Yes,
fine.
good.
So I have a lot of fun. I like things around bicycles and running, all that stuff. It's good.
No, that's crazy, man. 12 hours on a bicycle and running and swimming. How does your
Oh,
body feel after this experience? Like you must like
terrible.
when you stop, you collapse or something. Do you stay like 1 week
Terrible.
in bed? Like how is
Mm.
how is the after effects of doing a race like this?
Well, right after that, the only thing I want to do is to drink a beer and and eat something like a pizza or something like that. But most of the times, the problem is that you have to eat a lot of gels, for your nutrition during the race, and that
Yeah.
made me my mouth inside like sore. So I don't
Wow.
do so. So after the race, I have to drink water also and relax. Of course, the 2 days after, your legs are hurting a lot. Um, but I mean, it's fine. It's like the reward of doing those kind of races. And I said reward because you feel sore, but at the same time, very proud of yourself because you finished that again. So I know people that they have done an Ironman just once, which is amazing. But when you do
Amazing
an
regardless.
Ironman more than once, is like you see the sports in a different way because to do Ironman you have to train many years. It's not a matter of, hey, I'm going to run 10K, which is great at 10K. Don't get me wrong, but an Ironman is like a way of life. So this is why helped me a lot while working too much, because that makes you separate your professional life from your athlete, between quotes, life. You have to plan everything very well. So, like, okay, I'm going to go 7 to 8 to swim, 9 to 5 to the office, then or to work from home, then another 2 hours in the gym, and then running outside like 45 minutes or 1 hour and 30. So you have to plan everything. And I'm very square minded for some things, and that works very well for me. So I like scheduling everything.
So you can say that in case anyone wants to train for Ironman, they're gonna lose their social life and they're gonna live just thinking every moment about the race. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that, unless you make your friends in your triathlon club. So in that case, it's
Exactly.
fine.
You're gonna meet
So
your crazy people in the training. So hey, let's do some 50 kilometers. Hey, let's go and poof. That's it.
yeah, I was single most of my time doing Ironmans, so I didn't have any problem with family or anything.
Yeah. So it's easier to deal with, in this case, to train and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
But
So
the takeaway of this is important. Whatever you do, is important to balance between work and life. Whatever your life is doing sports or doing family time or whatever. But to find that balance is important. In my case, I find balance with doing sports, but you can find balance doing many different things, and it is very important because it's the way that we have. Even if you don't want to do any other thing than computers, it's good for you to fresh your mind and come back to your keyboard to do whatever with you know with relaxed mindset and fresh mind, as I said.
good, good. So in this case, here the key takeaway is that like we have to separate the work from work and maintain a good mental state because get out of the computer because we technology people we have the tendency if we can we would work on the computer 24 hours per day we would study, watch TV, play games, everything on the computer, and never leave the house. So in this case, it's quite important, you know.
Exactly. In my case, I also have a dog. I have to walk my dog or run with him every day at least a couple of times. So that also helps. But yeah,
Oh yeah, for
finding the
sure, for
balance
sure.
is very important.
Yeah, work-life balance is something, you know, everybody has to look forward to, you know, have
Yep.
as an objective, you know, to have this balance. But that's pretty crazy. So there we go with the crazy and funny Tony. So here now we're gonna go kind of into the more cloud aspect, more like technical Tony. So here,
Mhm.
obviously we're talking about cloud security. Um, but in general, do you think that there are some specific areas in cloud security that are sometimes, you know, underestimated or neglected by businesses or organizations? And if so, which areas do you believe need to be worked on? As a general, you know, as you see the market, as you see the people consuming the solutions, and you know, kind of what are businesses sometimes missing?
Well, unfortunately, what businesses are missing is the security part or the secure part of their cloud deployments. So the first thing I would do is to learn about security, even if you don't work on security, but to learn about how, which are the best practices and everything related to that in terms of security in the cloud. But the most important part, of course, is understanding identity and access management. This is very common to hear that. Okay, yeah, you need to learn to know about IAM. Yes, but I like to explain the cloud like an operating system. Okay, what is the cloud? Let's talk about AWS, but this applies exactly the same to Azure or GCP or any other cloud. But Linux has Linux or Windows has around 300 to 400 syscalls, right? Which means, okay, open a file, like send this to print, or open this file to see the network, or whatever. You know, syscalls that the user
Mhm.
interacts with the kernel.
Yeah.
In AWS, only AWS, there are more than 13,000 actions, which are kind of similar to what a syscall is for an operating system. 13,000 compared to 300 or 400. That is the level of the challenge we have in front of us. So, which are those 13 actions? Those are different things that a user can do in the cloud, like launch an EC2, a virtual machine instance, of EC2 instance. Open this port in a security group, close this port in the security group, create this load balancer, stop the load balancer, whatever. All of that stuff across more than 300 services are 13,000 actions. So that is what we have to learn. Of course, not those 13 actions, but 13,000 actions, but the how to use them, how we can create a secure environments, and how to put them in context with what the user needs to do in your workload. Let's say that you have an application, a regular application right now, a workload in the cloud uses an average of 10 to 15 services. We are talking about a regular service like Lambda functions, serverless, S3 buckets for storage, the hard drives, if you have EC2 instances, the EC2 security groups, you are using RDS, the relational database, in the flavor that you prefer. So now with a very regular architecture, I have mentioned 5 services, but let's add the WAF, right? The web application firewall. Let's add the balancers. Let's add many things. So now, when you have a security issue, you have to cover many different things. So the new universe in the cloud is huge compared to the hardening my Linux or hardening my Windows. Um, so that is why security or in the cloud is so important, because the scope is huge compared to what we had before. Because at the end of the day, before you were to your data center, you open the door and say, okay, this is what I have to harden, right? Now we don't have such a thing like a door in your in your data center. You have an API is the door of your data center. So understanding those APIs, the permissions of those APIs, that is the foundation part of the cloud.
That's pretty crazy. So I saw this 13,000, 14,000 actions. There's a site permissions cloud or whatever. When I saw that the first time, my friend, I was like, my goodness. I thought the cloud was big, but 14,000 actions and 14
And growing.
my and growing. It's always,
Exactly.
at least, of course, we're talking here about AWS, the biggest player, the one that has the most actions. We're not talking about Azure or GCP, but they all have like more than 10,000 actions each of these top 3 clouds. Imagine.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
imagine if a company goes multi-cloud. Are they crazy or no? Well, what's your opinion about this?
Yeah, very good point. Thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, going
Imagine
multi-cloud.
13,000
In my
13,000
opinion,
AWS.
going multi-cloud is the worst decision that any company or organization can make, ever, ever. Not only from the company or the organization standpoint, but also from the professional guy, the architect or the cybersecurity professional standpoint. So there is no way, unless you are a superhero or superhuman, to know all the clouds. There's no way. So we know a very good people, a very good experts that like here in Brazil, you have Rodrigo Montoro, right? Is Scott Piper in the US or Victor Grenu in France. So those are the most important guys knowing about the cloud, and they know just one cloud. I mean, they may know other clouds, but they are focused on one cloud because if you want to go excellence on something, you have to go one cloud. And for the companies are the same. Unless you have a lot of money to hire very smart people, there is no way that you can handle more than one cloud properly. I understand that some companies or governments, they say, okay, I don't want to put all my eggs in the same basket. Okay, I get it. But one thing is, having 50-50 across 2 cloud providers. Another thing is, okay, just have like a copy or disaster recovery environment or something like that in another cloud. That's all. But going multi-cloud as an organization or as a person, yeah, I think is a nonsense. And with that said, we at Prowler, we support multiple clouds because it's like a security tool. So in our case, also we are we have engineers that they know about AWS, other engineers they know about GCP, others engineers they know about Azure. And we try to know a little bit of everything, but for sure it's impossible. And I said that because I'm working on that. It's impossible to know the same level of all clouds. There is not time unless you don't want to do anything in your life, anything else.
Yes, yeah. So I agree with you on that. So when I first got into like, hey, I want to learn cloud, like do a career transition, I mentioned this on the first episode that I did with Alexandre Sieira. And my friend, I was
Alexander,
like,
he knows a
from
lot
Tempe.
about this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So my friend, I was like, hey, in the beginning of my career, I was like, hey, I want to learn 4 clouds. I want to learn Azure, GCP, AWS, and Oracle. And then that was like my first like newbie moment. I was like, hey, I want to learn everything, But I was warned by Rodrigo. He was like, man, don't do that. Don't do that. You wouldn't want to do that. But I was like the newbie. I was like, hey, I want to learn the cloud, man. The cloud is cloud security, man. Cloud security is for everybody. And later on, I noticed I was like, man, that's a terrible idea. But I always had the focus, for at least in my sense, to study for AWS and then pivot, to another cloud, into the top 3, Azure or GCP or kind of like that. But my main focus would be AWS, and I don't have any certifications. I have no idea what is Azure. I have no idea what is GCP. Like I never touched the platform because I know that if you study for one while using GCP while trying to learn Azure, trying to get the certification, my friend, your head is gonna be like a disaster. So in that
I know
case,
how to use the. Yeah, I have some sort of experience in the three major vendors that we are mentioning, but of course nothing compared to what I know about AWS. And I don't consider myself expert on AWS. I know AWS for many years. I started with AWS in 2012, but so for example, last week I did an online training about Azure because we have interns that they are learning Azure, and I wanted to know the same as them. Otherwise, there is no way to communicate each other. So I'm learning also now Azure. I did the same with GCP. I have to say that GCP is easier, probably easier than any other, at least in my opinion. But Azure is kind of a pain. uh, but I'll let you know in a few months if I learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I learned anything, if it was worth it, or it was like, hey guys, it's not worth it. Don't lose your time. But
Yeah,
of course,
yeah, exactly.
but I kind of want to kick off the question here. You know, kind of you mentioned Prowler. So can you just kind of give us an idea of like what is a CSPM? You know, because you kind of mentioned it. Like, what does it do? What is a cloud security posture management? Why do companies need it? And how do you see the market? You know, of the CSPM solutions in the next few years. You know, what are
Mhm.
some trends that you will probably see? You know, what's kind of the market going into? Is the market going more to the multi-cloud world, or they're kind of like getting away from it? You know, kind of like what do you see for
Mm.
the CSPM market in general?
Well, first of all, I don't like to play the the visionary role. So I have no idea what's going to happen in 2 3 years. But what I do know, 100% sure, is that cloud security issues are going to happen tomorrow and probably in a year from now. That is for sure. So we all need tools to secure and to detect security issues in our cloud infrastructure. So that is 100% sure. Unfortunately, because we would like to have a more secure cloud, right? But the point is, what a cloud security posture management tool does is to give you the visibility of what you have in the cloud, in your infrastructure, whatever the most important cloud vendors. What we do at Prowler is that Prowler is an open source cloud security posture management tool, but at the same time, there are so many acronyms around cloud, like the CNAPP for Cloud Native App Application Protection Platform, things like that. So we have to differentiate between the pure infrastructure at runtime. So like you have a security group attached to a virtual machine and it's 2 instance that is running. So we control the security of that. But also you may have code, infrastructure as code in your Terraform code or your CloudFormation code that is also something that you have to take care of in terms of security, but that is not running, that is in the code. So we do only runtime, we scan at runtime. So that is key for companies that are in the cloud to at least to know what they have, to know what they are exposing into the internet, because sometimes um, the one of the main problems of the cloud is that you don't have full visibility in some cases. And unfortunately, in some cases, AWS could have done it better when it comes to handling regions or handling services based on regions, etc. So something that I'm very proud of, Prowler, is that we go across all the regions all the time. Of course, you can scan just one region in AWS, but Prowler goes through all the regions all the time. And that is very good for the user because the user is going to realize everything that they have anywhere. And something that I have seen over the years is that in the cloud, in most cases, unless you are an expert, you don't know what you have and where. And sometimes somebody left our instance running with the open remote desktop the port open in Singapore, and nobody knew in the company, and that person already left the company, and somebody is mining bitcoins there, or not even mining bitcoins, something worse, like using that for child pornography or whatever. So we're talking about very serious things that, due to the lack of visibility, we are suffering, right? So that is why it's important to always have like an open mindset in terms of how holistic is the cloud. The cloud it has regions, has services, and you have to make sure you are looking at all that stuff. Another good example of that is the SageMaker, for example. SageMaker has SageMaker notebooks. SageMaker is a machine learning service, right, that helps the users in AWS to build their own notebooks and procedures around machine learning analysis and all that stuff. A notebook in SageMaker is a Linux instance. It's some sort of Linux, like a container. And you can do really bad things in terms of security on there. And you don't really know that that can be secured because you, as a machine learning expert, you are not a security expert. And sometimes that people exposes those notebooks into the internet without having clue that they are exposing a lot of data from their customers or their own company outside. So I'm adding those examples just to give the audience an idea of how challenging is doing all that stuff and how important it is to do this properly and secure. So it's our responsibility, but it's also it's our responsibility as a practitioners, but it's also the provider's responsibility. And that is another problem. That is the shared responsibility model, which is totally broken. It's something that they put a lot of effort explaining, but only with the examples that I gave to you, like, okay, you have a Lambda function, and now you have a SageMaker notebook. Can you tell me which is your responsibility there? Where in the SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, is there? So there is not, the line is moving up and down all the time. So for me, I have it very clear, but I have been in this business many years. But anybody that comes new to the cloud is like, okay, this is crazy. Is this my responsibility or is their responsibility? So the key here is, if you can configure it, it's your responsibility. That's all. And that is something that we try to do with Prowler or any CSPM tool tries to do, right? So if you can configure it, I'm going to tell you how to configure it and if it's properly set up or not. That is the key part of building a CSPM, let's say.
Nice. So you would say that kind of a CSPM's job is to find out these misconfigurations and alert the user? Does it have some sort of automation that it closes automatically, or is that kind of not the CSPM's role? Kind of where's the thin line between this?
You are opening the can of worms, my friend. The fixing stuff in the cloud. Okay, let me explain this. So, do we have time? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we have time. We have time. So
So
we can go.
Yeah. So yeah, Prowler or any other CSPM, what it does is to detect things. So hey, you have this open port, and probably is important because you have an instance behind, and it's the 22 port, the SSH, whatever, right? So there are severities in all the findings. But what happens if we fix what we find at runtime, which means that you have a service running, we find a misconfiguration or a configuration that is not compliance with your security standards, and I close that port. In the best case scenario, it's going to be better for your security posture, right? But it's not always best case scenario. And because there are many different situations in those that you have an open port because for a reason, even if it's insecure. So fix stuff in runtime in the cloud is something that a lot of companies are trying to sell, but there is not a lot of money there in terms, and and let me tell you why. It's because nobody is going to trust a third party to fix their shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also, and I'm not going to do that in an open source tool. So we want to do things. Actually, we probably add a couple of fixers in Prowler 4, which is the next version coming up in a month or two.
Oh man.
For those things that you can enable without breaking anything. So let's say enable EBS volumes encryption. This is not going to break anything initially, as far as I remember. Or yeah, whatever. Many other things that are like just a checkbox, and it's not going to enable config. The only thing that config can do for you is to
Make you spend more money.
empty your packet, your pocket, right, your wallet. But other than that, it's just like a checkbox or
It's a
enable.
kind of a good practice. It's a
Exactly.
kind of like a minimum good practice kind of thing
At
where
least
you don't
at least for
break the
production,
cloud.
right? Exactly. So we can do those type of remediations or auto remediations, but to remediate everything is not a good practice, at least not at runtime. What is the good practice? To if you are not a ClickOps shop, let me explain that. ClickOps are those companies that they have no idea about how to build software, how to build infrastructure as a software, and they build everything clicking in the browser, right? In the AWS console. Like, okay, launch an instance, create this auto-scaling group, whatever. But the mature companies, they build those their infrastructure with Terraform or with CloudFormation. So the good practice fixing stuff is going to that code, finding the issue, the security issue in the code, in the Terraform code or whatever, and say, okay, this is the problem. So make sure you fix it here and you redeploy anywhere you have that infrastructure deployed. So that is the way to do it. Of course, there are always shortcuts for fixing stuff like in runtime, but this is going to give you headaches for sure. And you are not
Nice.
going to learn how to fix stuff. You are just fixing stuff, but not how to fix them, you know?
Exactly. So I think it goes more into the maturity of the company to understand and resolve the issues, but with like understanding why it's an issue, not just the click and here, okay, here it's the checkbox and oh, we need this check. Okay, poof, okay, done. But kind of understanding the problem and trying to solve it at the root cause.
Yeah, exactly. And also, so there is nowadays with the coming back to the shared responsibility model, there is a very important confusion in the or misunderstanding in the market, in the community of users, when the AWS of the world or Azure of the world, they say, hey, we got SOC 2 certified or whatever, or you name it, ISO 27001 certified or whatever. They get certified, not you, dear user,
Exactly.
dear customer. So their certification, their compliance is not your compliance. And this is going to give you an idea of my next talk, how it's going to be about. Your compliance, so their compliance is not your compliance, and that is very important to understand. And not many people understand that point because they are always, showing off, hey, I have this, I have that, I have like 50 security frameworks applied in my infrastructure. But dear customer, you have to do it by yourself. And they don't tell
Exactly.
you that directly. So this is what I'm going to do, to tell people.
So you're gonna give a talk about that, or what's going?
I'm I'm
What is
I'm
this?
thinking about to send a paper about that to some events this year, because there is, as I said, the line that divide what is your responsibility and what is the vendor responsibility is so blurry. The theory is very clear, but let's go practical. So I want to show the practical side of that shared responsibility model. Like, okay, we have this infrastructure. Who is responsible? Of course, we can fix everything with API calls, but try to understand. I have seen in my, like few years ago, working in incident response, I have seen a company, more than one, closing business because they had just an asterisk, a star in an S3 bucket policy. Can you imagine to tell a company that we are cloud security professionals, but to tell the CEO of a company in New Zealand, hey, you have to close the company because you lost all the data in your S3 bucket because a guy added a stars somewhere that should be just put object.
My goodness.
And
They
you
get
close the business. I have seen that. I'm not kidding. That is true. And so that is important to take into account, And how can you tell that the CEO of that company, no, the share responsibility model, right?
The shared responsibility model. It's if you click it, it's your problem. That's
Yeah,
kind of the
exactly.
idea.
I had to say that. I had to say that, and I don't feel good about that.
My goodness, that's horrible. So, you did obviously work at AWS with some CSRT incident response. So I imagine you saw some crazy things there, man.
I did that at AWS, also at Fresco. I did that by myself also many times. So I did also training for incident response and cloud forensics. And yeah, you see things that are like, okay, yeah, now explain the theory. So there is no room for theory when you have an incident. So you have to explain and to prevent things. So of course there is a lot of work on the prevention thing, or detection engineering as we call it. But yeah, so that is why there is a gap between what the provider says and what you have to do. Let's try to fill that gap, at least with a talk.
Yes, I think you can give a talk about that, like, and cause some thought-provoking ideas, perhaps, to some players, or they're gonna be like, "Oh, this guy's crazy." Well, either one or two solutions. They're like, "Oh man, he's correct," or "He's just crazy." But
Well,
it
it's a
sounds like
matter of practice. Everybody that works and operates in the cloud, they know what we understand about that. So there are many different ways to fix this, other than in addition to, of course, learning and teaching, but also, of course, I think the providers have a lot to do there. It's different. So
nice.
the fact that they have a lot to do there doesn't mean that they are going to do it, or they want to do it,
Exactly.
or it's worth it to do it. In
Yeah,
many
if it's
senses.
not financially worth it, they're like, "Hey, okay, it's just another. It's gonna stay in that backlog forever, and that's it."
I'm not going to open that can of worms either. Because
Oh, see,
I have friends in Microsoft, I have friends in Amazon, I have friends in Google, and I want to keep my friends.
I like all my friends, so please, friends, let's all be in a good line here. Everybody has a lot of work, and that's it.
No, yeah. So, jokes apart, the providers, they do a good job in the side that they can do it. And of course, to find the balance between usability and security is not easy. Never was easy. Remember those versions of Microsoft Vista was Vista, or
Yeah,
where I remember a
Vista or
version
Seven.
or Windows. I remember Windows released a version of Windows after XP with very good security, but nobody was using it because it was unusable, pretty much. Or
Yeah,
remember SC Linux that Red Hat enabled by default back in 2004, I think it was. I have a Red Hat here actually, so I know SC Linux very well. I fought SC Linux many times. SC Linux made Linux very, very, very secure, but was also hard to manage. I wrote articles about that for the same reason. So the security and usability are not very good friends.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a talk. I believe it was the episode before you, and the guy. So he works at AWS, and he said, "Hey, the when you project the when you create the projects, there is a balance of accessibility for the user and security. The more you put security, the less accessibility the user or the devs or everybody has more difficulty. Oh my god, you have to do MFA sign in, you have to do authentication every hour, you have to do this and that. Like the more you update the security, the less facilitated, the less accessibility the user has or the developer or whoever. And that kind of goes hand on hand, where you kind of have to have a fair balance. Like, where is the good security where it doesn't like stop operations, but it's not like horrible that like nobody hears about it, nobody like there's nothing there, there's no controls in place to prevent a disaster like that.
Yeah, there are good examples in on the AWS blogs on some deployments with not very good security, but at the same time, I understand the the fact that you want to teach something or to show people how to do something, but not necessarily how to do something 100% secure, only 50% secure. Yeah,
uh,
it depends. So I know the level of quality in most things in AWS, because I worked for them a couple of years, is very high. The level is high, but it's a huge company, so nothing is perfect. That is in terms of building stuff, but in terms of providing services and products to enable all the best practices, security best practices in services is something that is a long conversation, but it's also very expensive. Very expensive.
exactly. To implement every best practice, it's obviously financially as sometimes not even worth it, through the headache and through all messing up with the code and reconfiguring it, and it's can be kind of a big wormhole in there in that
Yeah,
case.
actually, so something that we have been working at Prowler open source for that is that depending also the region that you are working on, the account and everything, some things are more important than others, right? So the same way that you can write a check or you can write security standard or security compliance framework, now in Prowler you can write filters in order to get alerted of the things that cares to you actually. And also the same way that you can change the severity. So for example, okay, if the account is in production, everything that is medium severity should be high severity, right? Things like that. Those are filters. And this is something that we haven't seen people doing it much in other products. So we do it, and it's open source. And coming back to the other question that you mentioned, of what is the future of CSPM or this kind of tools or services. What I don't know what is going to happen, but what I know is that we are some sort of in the new era of cloud versus closed versus open. So there are many places where they say, okay, scan your network, scan your cloud, scan your whatever, but you don't really know what they are doing.
Exactly.
So you are just trusting a third party to tell you, hey, you have this port open, or hey, you have this whatever not set up. So what we want to predicate and tell everybody is, hey, not only you have Prowler for free, but this open. So you can see what Prowler is checking your infrastructure. And you should ask for the same to others, right? Like there are many good open source tools out there for the cloud that you can use them and see what they are doing, instead of having to trust a third party on whatever they are saying that they are doing, but you don't know. And I said that because we see issues in checks. best practices or improvement in checks every day. So those that they have the closed source, we have no idea.
Exactly. It's closed source, so you don't even know what's going on. So that's kind of one more benefit of an open source product, open source solutions in general. You can kind of read through the code and understand what's going on, not be completely blind to the checks, to
Exactly.
scams, and things like that.
And with security SaaS products, that happens too much. So everything is closed. So now I think there is a new era coming about what is open and what is closed. It's like, remember back in the days, Windows versus Linux. So I
Exactly.
don't want to open that kind of worms either. But when it comes to SaaS and when it comes to software as a service, as security, it's important for the customer to understand what you are doing. And sometimes, unless you go through CloudTrail in the case of AWS and see every single action from
Being
that
called.
role, you have no idea, right?
Yes, if you go to the CloudTrail, it's another wormhole there, So it's
Yeah.
understanding where it goes, where's the API calls, and that in itself is already another a huge, not a problem, but like a huge wormhole where you can get lost in the logs and the API calls. And
Yeah.
as we said, there's 14,000 actions. You're not going to remember it all, so it's
Exactly.
a lot of
Exactly.
actions to remember, and then you pivot to one, pivot to another, and that's a crazy situation. But man, so we passed the 1 hour mark, but I really, really, really want to ask you just one more question here. I have
Mm-hmm.
one final question for us to kind of talk about. So here obviously we're talking about cloud, but if you were to give somebody like a recommendation, so what would be your top three recommendations for someone if they like to learn more about the cloud, like to do a transition, or they would like to learn more? Is there any like learning path, study methods,
Mm.
cloud that you recommend to people? Imagine somebody's completely new to the cloud. Like, what would you give them as a path?
First thing is to pick one cloud provider, just one, just one. Don't try it. I mean, once you know about one cloud provider, you can try to cover others at least at a high level, but pick one. The one that I will pick is AWS because it's the most um, the one with more customers, with more business market. Um, Once you pick the cloud, start with the foundations. AWS has a very good training and free training for all the foundations. Go to places like a Cloud Guru, for example. I love a Cloud Guru. We use it, and learn the foundations. Take some certifications, the easy certifications through the more difficult ones. Certifications is not a guarantee or of anything other than you pass the exam, but they help you to be focused and study something in particular. So the balance is good when it comes to getting certifications. Um, yeah, and practice. So the good thing of a Cloud Guru or others is you can practice, create things, write code, understand the cloud. Is something amazing to learn. If you like computers, if you like infrastructure, it's something very, very rewarding because you feel like a very empowered because you can build things very fast. And once you know the foundations of how your cloud of choice work, learn security about that. If you don't have security background, it's probably going to be a little bit more challenging, but there are very good also training courses about what security is in the cloud. Um, but also it's important to understand cybersecurity in general, and security network and networking security, operating system security, internet in general is going to help you to to be a good cloud professional.
Great, great. So don't try to be like Fernando. Try to don't try to like, hey, I want to learn the four clouds. Kind of be
Don't be
the Fernando
Fernando.
now. Eh, be the Fernando nowadays. No, just focus on one, maybe two, and that's it. That's you need to maintain your mental sanity.
Yeah, you know what
Uh,
happens if you try to learn two things at the same time. I don't think the brain is ready for that. But if you learn something good, let's say you pick a Microsoft Azure, it's fine. So once you have a good expertise, not probably an expert, but good experience, it's going to be way easier to learn any other cloud because you are mapping mentally, you are mapping the services, you are mapping the concepts. It's not everything one to one, okay, between clouds, unfortunately. It's like Windows to Linux. There is not 100% one-to-one mapping, but it helps. So if you know well about um, you know how the services work in Microsoft, unless you got into the registry, this is another thing. But so you know about the open ports, the firewall, you know the basics, the storage. And then you move to Linux or your Unix, you know that also the basics. Okay, I have these open ports, I have a firewall, I have storage, you know how to configure mirroring in the hard drives, all that stuff are the basics. So in the cloud, it's more or less the same. So you learn one cloud well, and then mapping mentally the differences is going to be way easier. So it's going to take you less time. I guess it's like learning a language. So you learn one language and then you try to map other languages to the ones that you have learned. That happens, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, that happens with me. I speak English and Portuguese, and then I'm trying to go into the Spanish world, and you can notice the similarities of one language or another. So I use that kind of as a reference myself. But just kicking off what you said, in essence, cloud concept doesn't change. Of course, each player has their own way to implement it, but it's basically the
Mm.
same. Everyone
Mm.
has a firewall solution, everyone has networking services, everyone has a VM solution, everybody has basically the same concepts. You know, the IAM in each cloud provider is just different how it works. So in
Yeah.
that case, like what I'm doing is I'm trying to focus, man, 100% AWS, and then like what you said, pivot to another cloud. I'm kind of already looking to a second cloud that I'm possibly going to learn. I had a guest on the podcast here. He kind of changed my mind. I was like, oh man, what he said was really good. I think I'm gonna change my cloud journey a little bit, but I'm 100% focused on AWS because man, it's so much things to learn and if you I sometimes I see beginners do this. Hey, we're gonna do all the free certificates available. So they mix 4 clouds. Man, it's they get certificates from AWS, from Microsoft, and from Oracle, and I'm like, oh man, it's kind of get the cringe feeling. I'm like, man,
Yeah, if you
it's
want to have
incredible.
the basics is fine. Probably you can do it. But the very basics is just to know the services. Okay, this service here is the name is that. In there, the name is that. Whatever. So it's fine. But and probably for some roles, like let's say sales people or marketing people, that is totally fine. Don't get me wrong. But we are talking about cloud practitioners and security professionals, and there is not, unless you have an IQ of 200, there is no room for that many information, that much
Unless,
information.
yeah, I see some guys on LinkedIn. They have like 80 certificates, and those guys are aliens. But those are just weird creatures that like they only study to they live to study, and I'm like, my goodness, those people are crazy. But that's another wormhole there. But we're talking
Yeah,
more about
I
like
mean,
the
I like
beginners, the
I like
beginners.
certifications. I have my CISP, which is the most important one that I have in my case. I did the AWS security. I did the Red Hat certification for administrator. I did so many in the last 20 years, but now I only keep the CISP because I renew it, and I think it was very difficult to me to get. But again, the certification is nothing if you don't do the job and if you don't take advantage of it for your work. So If to get a certification helps you to focus on something, do it. If not, it's fine. So in my case, in my company, I never have asked, or I'm going to ask to have a certification, unless a provider say, hey, if you want to be partner, you need 2 certificates. In that case, I'm going to pay the employees to do the exam, right? To take the exam. But in terms of hiring, I don't care if you have 1 or 20 certifications. I don't care. In my case, okay?
Yes, yes, of course. Because that's kind of now going to the other wormhole where certification is just a paper. It doesn't mean that you know how to implement it. It just certifies that you know what it does. It's one thing, you know,
Exactly.
knowing what the services do, and it's another thing building, architecting, and creating solutions without the certification paper.
Yeah, there are some
That's
certifications that
another
are
wormhole.
exams that are very good. Actually, I know some exams in AWS, or I remember the Red Hat certified administrator exam was hands-on 100%, and I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot. But what I'm not saying that are worthless. What I'm saying is taking certifications for the sake of having the certificate because you want to wear a nice jacket, or having all the badges in your website. That is not for me. That's all. If it's for others, it's fine. Good job. You are a machine, but it's not for me. That's all.
Exactly. There's crazy people for everything. Hey man, there's Tony. He did 3 Ironmans. He's not a normal creature. The guy does 3 Ironmans. I don't know how many people even do one Ironman. Imagine three. So the guy's already kind of crazy. But kind of translates to your lifestyle, your way of thinking, the determination. So that's a pretty cool thing there. And
Thank you.
so I really appreciate your time here. So I appreciate if anyone's still watching until this time. I hope uh, the podcast itself, the episode was very interesting. It was supposed to be only an hour, but I was like, man, this conversation was too good. I couldn't cut it off. So we extended it a little bit. So I'm sorry, but it's worth of gold here. The information, kind of like what you said, Tony, giving back to the community. I was like, hey, I couldn't cut off kind of the whole idea of the podcast is cloud security. And man, we could do like 3 more episodes, and there wouldn't be enough time to talk about everything that we could talk about.
Yeah, there is
So that's
a
why
lot to cover, and I'm having very good time with you as well, Fernando. So thanks for the opportunity to explain what I do, and if it helps others, that is more than perfect.
perfect. So I just kind of want to give here the final shout outs too. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, how can they find you? What's the best way? And email, site, like how can they find you?
The easiest way probably is through LinkedIn. They can find me looking for Toni de la Fuente, or Tony Blix, BLYX, at Twitter as well. Or yeah, that's enough. So I try to respond unless you want to sell me something. I respond. uh, or something that happens now very very often is that people that wants to sell you people, right? Like recruiters, providers of people, right? And
Yeah.
I don't have time for that, but of course I'm open for mentoring, or to learn from others. So yeah, I'm always available. If it takes probably 2-3 days to respond, but I always do it.
It's like kind of what I say. I sometimes I take a while, but I respond, I promise.
Yeah,
Sometimes it takes a week, 3 days, 4 days. So the easiest way, at least in this sense, first contact was through LinkedIn, and then kind of get into other channels, and maybe uh, find out some other ways to talk and get in touch with the community as well.
yeah. Actually, in our Prowler GitHub repo, we have the link to our Slack, Prowler community Slack, and we are there all the time. So that is another cool way to reach out to me or the team. and discuss anything.
Awesome. So possibly I will try to recruit some people here. Just Tony, just letting you know, I'm probably gonna recruit Pepe or uh, the I forgot the other guy's name. I'm sorry, my friend.
Nacho
I
or
just remember
Sergio or
Nacho.
John.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Nacho,
or
Sergio.
two.
I'll try to probably bring them on. And like, hey, would you guys like to talk? Talking
Yeah,
to the
feel
CEO
free.
here. Like, hey, why not?
They will be very open to do that. They are very good. So I'm very glad that I have that team, and also we have a very good time, not only working together, but also when we go out and hang out in bars, having a good dinner together, or throwing axes, which is something that we do very often.
Uh-huh.
Throwing axes like darts. Instead of darts, we throw axes.
No, that's next level Viking stuff right there.
Yeah. Heavy metal, man. This company has been
Yeah,
built based on heavy metal, and we are very metal people.
that's awesome. But as you can see, you have an AC/DC behind you. Iron Maiden, so
Yeah,
it's a very metal company there.
yeah, yeah. And more
But
coming. The version 4
yeah,
of
there
Prowler is going to be a good song of Iron Maiden. You will see it.
you see. So here, just kind of giving so this we're recording this in January, but probably uh, be launched in February this episode. But when is Prowler 4 coming out?
Um,
Is there an estimate?
yeah, probably March. Yeah,
March.
Q for sure. Q1 2024. So, and we are bringing nice things like some dashboards and some
Oh, there we go.
Kubernetes also.
Oh,
We are
you
going to
see.
be able to You are going to be able to scan for security issues your AWS, your Azure, your GCP, but also your Kubernetes cluster, and more
See.
more cool things coming up.
All right. So by the time that people watch this, there is still you guys gonna have to wait a little bit more.
Yeah,
And if
probably.
if it's
But
coming out in March,
they can take a look to the repo. So we have a branch, the version 4 branch, so it's all open, so it's fine.
oh,
You
it
can
is.
look at the progress. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So if anybody wants to check it out, the beta release of number 4, and it's really great what you're doing there for the cybersecurity, the cloud security world. So of course so we really just want to thank you for your time here, and it was great talking to you, my friend.
Thank you, Fernando. Yeah, it was a pleasure. So I hope to see you this year in different events in the US if you can go.
It's in the US, man. I'm gonna have to go to Europe.
Okay, in the Europe. So you are more than welcome if you come to Spain.
Exactly.
Beers on us.
Beers on us. There you go. So you see, that's a plus one right there. But I really want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, and really give a great shout out to Lucas here. So the community, the builder of this community, SOC Brazil, and the idea is kind of bring professionals, people talk about cloud. That's it. That's what we're trying to build here. So I appreciate if anybody is still watching, listening until this moment, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. So thank you so much, guys, and see you guys later.